everybody, I'm Zac.
And I'm Jesse.
And you're watching In Depth.
On Now You Know.
Sponsored by abetterrouteplanner.com. Fantastic route planning for any kind of EV. It tells you where all the chargers are, how long it's going to take you, super accurate. And the best part that I like about it the most is that you can do waypoints.
Yes. So I want to go here, then I want to go there, then I hit the charger, then I want to go there. And you could set your own safety factor. So you don't have to like sit there at the supercharger being like, I want a bigger safety factor, so I'll just wait. But now I'm going to be late 10 minutes.
Right.
You can plot it all in. It's all configurable. Love it.
And brought to you by ecoware.us. We have new designs uploaded every week. In fact, we're wearing 2 new ones right here. And we've got a variety of cool products up there, including things like beach towels, tote bags, mugs. So go check it out. It's carbon neutral and a tree is planted for every order. And it helps support us here on Now You Know. All right, so what are we talking about this week, Jess?
So we're talking about the next technological revolution. It's happening. Now, you might be saying, Zac and Jesse, what are you guys talking about?
Yeah, so we have so many actual technological revolutions that are happening now that I don't think we can keep them all straight in our heads. So, for instance, let's talk about this. This is a new lithium sulfur battery that they're working on. They're working on it at the physics department at Chalmers University of Technology in Sweden. So we don't normally talk about all the new breakthroughs in research in battery technology because there's so much of it going on around the world that it would probably take up an entire show. You could probably just do a weekly show on all the new research going into these batteries.
Right.
And so for us, it would get a little boring if we told you about all of it, but it is going on all the time. And this is one example of it where they're taking an existing technology like lithium ion batteries, and they're saying, what if? What if we changed out this one part of it? So as Carmen Cavallo says, he works at the physics department there at Chalmers University, he says the porous structure of the graphene aerogel is key. It soaks up a high amount of the catholyte, giving you high enough sulfur loading to make the catholyte concept worthwhile. This kind of semi-liquid catholyte is really essential here. It allows the sulfur to cycle back and forth without any losses. It is not lost through dissolution because it is already dissolved in the catholyte solution. Since these batteries are produced in an alternative way from most normal batteries, new manufacturing processes will need to be developed to make them commercially viable. When we report on stuff like this and we get to that sentence, which is very common a lot of times, it's like, we've got this cool research. It's going to take a while to get it to be commercially viable. We usually don't report on it to you because we know that it's probably a few years off, if at all.
Right. But it is exciting that there are so many different types of these new batteries. And this is just one of, again, of many, 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 many. When we started the show back in 2016, it was pretty rare that you would discover a new battery a new battery technology seems to be developing. That's exciting.
I think a lot of people outside of this space, outside of batteries, don't realize that the last time we really had a new battery technology breakthrough was in the 90s. The 1990s, we saw Sony and Professor Goodenough. They came up with what we know today as the lithium-ion battery, and that enabled a whole new generation of things to come out, like cell phones, right?
You can't, if you had a lead-acid battery in here, with the same size, battery would last maybe 4 minutes.
Right, and even like nickel metal hydride, which seemed cool at the time, or nickel cadmium, those battery technologies still, if you go back and remember what they were horrible. The batteries had memories, and they didn't last very long. So this new technology came out, lithium ion. It allowed us to do all these cool, amazing things, but then it just stopped. Most of us thought, I think, oh, well, they're continuing to work on a better battery, but they didn't because they had something that worked, and there was no real interest in working on something better.
Right. It was good enough for laptops, which at the time was what most people were interested in. Oh, boy, laptops. And then cell phones. Oh, it works for cell phones, too. Oh, good. Great.
And even it works for cars. Like my Model X from 2016 has this technology battery in it.
Basically just laptop batteries. And Elon Musk was like, okay, you know what we could do? We could make an electric car using just some existing technology. We'll put it in a special arrangement. We'll add some cooling so it'll work better than your typical laptop, which, you know, after so many cycles, it dies just based on thermal loads and stuff like that. They put in some engineering work, but they didn't revolutionize the battery. Right. The battery was just a battery. You could buy that battery. People have those batteries in flashlights and stuff. It's the same thing powering that car.
Yeah, and Elon realized that was good enough for getting forward with his EV vision.
Right.
But that's the amazing part. Because he was successful with the Model S, all of a sudden, all these car companies started going, oh, well, we can do it too. We can make an EV. And all these people said, what if there was an even better battery?
Right, because honestly, lithium ion is great. It's in my car too, but it's not perfect. It's not like the best in terms of weight to power ratios,
Recharge speed,
all sorts of things like that. There are definitely better battery technologies that are on the horizon, but they wouldn't be on the horizon if there weren't a need for it. If, for instance, there were no Model S, there were no electric cars that people got excited about and said, oh boy, a Model S, I can't wait to buy one. A Model 3, I can't wait to buy a Model 3. Suddenly you have people going, electric cars, we haven't seen them since the 1910s practically.
Right, and those were lead acid batteries with really short ranges.
How are you making this car go from 0 to 60 in 2.4 seconds? Oh, it's lithium-ion batteries? Really? Lithium-ion batteries? Couldn't we make a better battery with more range and more power and faster charging times? We should work on that. Let's make a better battery. John, let's make a better battery. Come on, let's do it.
And I want to put you in the mindset in the 90s when they came out with the lithium-ion battery. They thought, this is amazing. I don't think we can get any better than this. It only appears that you can get better than it when you put enough great minds working on it, and you're going to have to put some money and time and research and sweat and blood into making that happen. But now that we have all these bright minds going into this field, we're finding out that yes, there's tons of cool new batteries for not just cars, and you can come up with batteries that are better for stationary energy storage. That's a really key point here, is until you have a reason for lots of people to get into a field, you're generally not going to see a big breakthrough.
And I think that we've seen similar things in some of our lifetimes.
So we changed our educational system in the 50s and 60s in this country because of one thing.
We learned that we should be doing it better?
Nope. We were at war, basically, a Cold War with the Soviet Union.
Okay.
We wanted to get to space before they did. And they got to space before we did, actually. But we wanted to keep doing one-upping them, right? So we were like, we have to change our educational system. Actually, that's not what got us to space, because those people had already been through the educational system. But we believed that propaganda, and we changed our educational system to focus more on math and science.
Yep.
And the benefit of that was all those kids that grew up with math and science, a lot of them went on to develop technologies like semiconductors, computers, and telecommunications, things that the internet needs to work better.
I see. So it essentially created the internet.
Yeah. So we basically had just a big wave of intelligent brains that were good at solving these problems. And so we came up with a big technological revolution of the internet, which probably happened faster than it would have if we hadn't been in that Cold War with Russia.
Interesting. Okay.
And so a lot of that space technology, a lot of that stuff that people at the time said, why are you spending all that money and throwing it into space? Well, it actually, for decades to come, benefited us all here on Earth. Right. And that's an important lesson to remember, that a lot of times when you think money's being spent on one thing, it actually comes back to help in other ways that you couldn't possibly have imagined.
Interesting. And, when we talk about the internet, I mean, that is where the majority of intelligent people are going. They're saying, where's the greatest opportunity? The internet. I can start a company solely based around software. I can create a company that leverages the internet.
That's a really good point. Not many people for the past few decades have been talking about, hey, I'm going to get into big auto. That's where I'm going to be able to innovate, because there's been no innovation there. There's been more cup holders and there's been USB ports, but for them, by and large, there hasn't been much innovation in automobiles. Right. So Detroit and places like that have not attracted the best and brightest engineers. They've been going into places where they think they can innovate.
Which is, for the most part, the internet.
Right.
By and large, generally.
Right.
And I would argue that it's not just big auto that's, suffered. I think that, we talk about all sorts of different kinds of infrastructure. I mean, we're still building roads the same way we built roads in the 50s.
Right.
And they last about as long as they did in the 50s. I would argue that, planes haven't gotten much better than the 50s or 60s or 70s.
No, I think this is a really good point. If you watch a movie that's set in, say, the 70s, you can't generally tell that they're using a place, a city that's any different than today's city, because they aren't, because nothing's really changed.
The only difference, and the whole reason that they can do period pieces in the 70s so easily is because you just change out all the cars
and put a few signs up.
They all look 70s cars. Right. And
put on some bell bottoms.
Right. And boom, you didn't have to repaint the roads. You didn't have to rip up the roads. It's way different than when you're doing Downton Abbey, and you have to go on location to a place that hasn't changed since the 1900s or whatever.
Right.
This is all dirt roads and stuff like that. There hasn't been much innovation.
No, I mean, look at buildings, right? How we build buildings hasn't changed a whole lot. The door on your house is probably the same door that your grandparents would have used. Right. Like, there's no innovation there that's been going on. Most of it is related to things to do with computers and the internet.
Right. And your phone, obviously, huge leaps in terms of our phones and stuff like that. But in terms of most other things, we haven't seen much innovation. And what that has really led to is disruption. I think that we all sort of imagine that technology is this wave that is just has a uniform front, and we're just sort of learning more as we go through time, and things are just progressively getting better and better and better.
In every category.
In every category, right. Where that's not true.
No.
Because certain things, are you going to go into mattress technology? No, probably not. If you're a very intelligent person and you're like, whoa, I can definitely make a lot of money from what I'm going to work on. I want to make a big difference. What can I work on? It's not going to be shoes. It's not going to be, the way that we create buildings. No one's going to be like, sheetrock's kind of dumb. As soon as it gets wet, it's total trash. We should come up with something else. Man, just the way we build houses is kind of dumb. Man, I wish I could move this wall 1 foot over so that my bed would fit.
Right.
But I can't. I'd have to hire a contractor. He'd have to demo the entire wall, rip it down, throw it into a dumpster,
right.
and then build a whole new wall. There's been no innovation there. So technology is not this sort of ever encroaching wave of betterment. It's these little nooks that just sort of, oh, I made a discovery in this. Oh, wow.
Right.
Hey, the internet, oh, hey, telecommunications. Oh, wow, we can do so much with this. Oh, hey, I invented a new type of material. Okay, cool. Now we can ship water in plastic bottles.
And it comes in unexpected ways. Take a look at this. So this is the T-Pod. We've reported it before on Tesla Time News, but it's an autonomous vehicle that's designed in Sweden to do something that you wouldn't normally think you even needed something like this for, right? It's to carry around logs. It's for the logging industry.
Right.
And you might think, well, why do we need that? We have trucks.
Right.
But it's far more efficient. It's electric. It's clean. And this is something that just a few years ago, if we had reported this on this channel, I think the whole world would have just stopped and gone like, what the heck is that? An autonomous electric log driving vehicle?
Yeah, the world wouldn't have stopped. They would have gone, yeah, sure.
But I mean, this is because of the convergence of a bunch of technologies that have just happened while we've been a show. And it's happening so fast that I think most people who don't watch this show or think about these topics don't even know that it's going on. Autonomous vehicles, which uses AI and smart computers that have to develop very fast. It's using electric batteries, electric motors, things that just a few years ago no one was ever talking about.
The electric motors were going to be used for a pump. Electric motors would be used for your washing machine, uses that you're used to seeing an electric motor in. Transport wasn't generally seen, at least on the roads, as being possible to be electric. And I think that Tesla has gone a long way into showing that, yeah, long distance trips can be done on electricity. It's not this sort of limp around town kind of car.
And I mean, Elon is the major force that has driven a lot of these technologies. He was able to see a couple very key points. One was, yes, we've had electric cars before. I didn't invent that, but I'm going to invent an electric car that can do so much more than you thought an electric car could do, right, and capture your imagination. Imagination there is the key part. He captured people's imagination when he put you in the seat of a roadster and it went like that. And you went, oh, this is an electric car?
Right. I thought it was a golf cart.
Right.
And he continues to do that with things like reusable rockets and boring tunnels. And most people, including probably some of you that are watching, don't see the implications for some of these changes, especially the boring tunnels. People are just like, Elon, why are you working on tunnels?
There's a technology that hasn't really advanced much. I mean, yes, we do have machines that can dig tunnels, but we've had that since the 80s.
And we haven't improved upon it. I think the really telling thing was that when Elon went to these companies and he was asking them, like, so what are the major problems? What's preventing you? Are you power limited or are you thermally limited?
Right.
And they were like, what?
We're just happy to cash the checks, man.
Right. He went, oh, this is one of those technologies that has not progressed with the amount of technology that we have. And that is a lot of just what disruption is technology has moved forward, and for whatever reason, nobody thought to make it better.
Right.
It would be like if you were trying to conduct a scientific experiment and you were like, okay, I'm going to get my my microscope with the hand-ground lenses, same one that was used in the 1800s, and we're going to, I'm just going to look through that. Oh, I think I can see something. And then someone coming over and be like, dude, what are you doing? We have such better technology than this.
Right.
It would be like using a hand drill instead of a power drill. Like, what? Why are you trying to bore a hole with that?
And I know that a lot of people right now are saying, you guys don't know what you're talking about. There's technological innovation all the time. Because if we say something like, well, airplanes haven't changed much, you'll be like, no, look at the latest Boeing and Airbus planes. They're completely different than the planes in the 60s. Yes, they've made incremental changes. Every few years, they can make it a little more efficient or fly a little bit farther. But they haven't made any technological disruption to that industry until something like this. So this is the Lithium VTOL, vertical takeoff and landing aircraft, which is electric jets, and it's going to be autonomously driven and carry 5 passengers. Pretty crazy stuff.
Right. This changes the paradigm of air travel. When this actually will hit, I don't think that enough of us are actually thinking of the implications. You know, you might be saying, okay, so I go to the airport and I get in one of these things. It's like, no, you don't have to go to the airport now.
Right.
Suddenly...
Who needs an airport?
Right, because there is no pilot in here because it's fully autonomous. Maybe there'd be a little landing spot nearby to where you live. You'd take an autonomous car over to that, and then you'd get in this little airplane and it would go...
But here's the thing. A lot of you out there are right now coming out with lists of reasons why this can't work, right? You're saying, well, I bet you can't go that far on a charge. I bet you that, it could crash.
It'd be too loud.
These are pessimists coming up with problems for every solution.
Right.
And yes, it's not perfect yet. We haven't gotten to that point. But luckily, there are people out there who have this vision who, even though maybe the battery technology isn't quite there yet, are working on getting the rest of this working so that when the better batteries come, plug them in, good to go.
Right.
And as we're seeing, we're definitely going to have those better batteries before much longer.
Right. And I think that this just brings up an important point, which is that I think that there is not enough imagination in our culture right now. Right. I think that we have been taught, whether it's in school or whether it's just by watching TV for so long, don't let your imagination go wander too far.
Right.
Think about what you can do now. Think about minor improvements you can make. Don't think about changing the status quo. Keep everything just as it is. It's fine.
There's a time of your life when you have just boundless imagination, right? And that's when you're a kid. Mm-hmm. And during that time, we have imagination kind of squashed out of us because we're kind of, like you just said, told that that's not such a good thing. You should be focused on your future,
right.
Prepare for tomorrow, and here's what you need to do to be ready for a job of tomorrow. Well, we can't possibly be right about that anymore because things are happening so fast now that if I were to tell you exactly what to study so that you could be successful, in 10 years, I would be wrong. There's no way I could have predicted any of the things that are happening right now 10 years ago.
Right. It would be like, oh, you should be a blacksmith so you can make horseshoes. But like in 1910.
Right.
Like, oh, horseshoes, that industry has been around a long time. You should be a blacksmith.
But here's a skill that will help you no matter what time of life you're in.
Right.
Imagination.
Exactly.
They don't teach it in school. It should be a class. It should be like I'm going to math and I'm going to science and I'm going to imagination for a period. But there's no imagination class. I can't fathom why there isn't, because that is the most important skill that humans have, is in being able to imagine a solution to a problem.
But to be honest, humans aren't very good at imagining just in general. You think about an autonomous car now, and you're saying, okay, so it's like a car. It's just like my car, but it drives itself.
Right, that's as far as you get.
It's like, no. It once it's done driving you, it's not going to sit in the parking lot anymore. Right, it's going to go drive off. It's going to go drive off, pick somebody else up. And then you're like, but I don't want it to do that. I want it to sit in my driveway. It's like, no, keep thinking. Keep going. If it can pick up other people, that means it can be a special car just for picking up 2 people.
Right.
Then you could have a car that's just for picking up 4 people. You could have a car that's just a bed. You could have a car that's a treadmill. You could have a car with a masseuse inside who gives you a massage on your way to work. You could have a car that's a workstation. You could have if you keep imagining, there are many different solutions. It's the same as when people were saying, okay, this automobile. So it's like a horse and carriage, but without the horse. It's a horseless carriage. Okay.
There you go. You got it.
I
Nailed
got it. So it's just a carriage without the horse. I completely understand. Nope. Yeah, exactly. So I can do everything the horse and carriage can do just without the horse. Great.
Got it.
I hate taking care of the horse.
Right.
Now I don't have to. I get it. No. 1900s is a great example because it was right before this huge boom of technology in telecommunications with telephones.
The automobile.
The automobile was a huge innovation.
And electricity.
All three of those things makes the 1900s, like 1900s, completely different than the 1930s, which was just 30 years difference. It's a completely different time. You can have a setting, Red Dead Redemption 2 is set like just in there. And, Red Dead Redemption 1 is also set right in the turn of the century. It's a great example because you can point to things and you can be like, Amazon.com. Explain it to someone in the 1900s. Okay, so you can just order whatever you want and it'll come in 1 to 2 days. There's the Sears Roebuck catalog, and if I put in an order, I can get it in some number of weeks or months. It's like, no, you get it the next day if you live in a city.
Right.
I can't possibly see how that would happen.
Right.
It's like, because you're missing huge things. Okay, so let's say we start breeding some faster horses and suddenly I can ride a horse at 30 miles an hour. That's amazing. Get a guy and you put him on the horse and, I guess you'd have to mail him a letter. It's like, no, telecommunication. Like, there's so many steps.
Telecommunication?
So many steps removed.
That's crazy talk.
From 1900s to today, to Amazon.com.
Well, and I want to take it one step further.
Right.
Let's say it's 1996 when Amazon was founded. And I explained to you in 1996 what Amazon was going to do just 30 years later, right? I mean, this is within your lifetime.
Right.
If I were to explain that to someone, they would still think you were crazy.
Right.
If you said, well, bookstores pretty much won't go to a bookstore anymore. You'll get all your books online. They'd be like, what? Throughout human history, we've gone to bookstores.
Right.
Like, no. If you said to them, you'll order all of everything you pretty much need on this platform and it'll come to your door, and you'd be like, you mean I'm not going to go to stores much?
How could I possibly do that? I remember being a kid and we would go to the library to check out movies, and there would just be the same movies there forever. And, I was a kid, so it was all kids' movies. I wasn't, trying to see the latest blockbuster. We'd go there and I would pick out a movie and we would check it out at the library. And then that would be the movie that I watched all week, right? And I was a kid, so that's fine. But if someone was like, hey, there's going to be this thing called Netflix, and you can just watch whatever you want, whenever you want, you don't have to go anywhere to watch it, I'd have been like, you're crazy. I remember when On Demand came out, and we were just like, wow, we can just watch a movie right now.
Right.
That's amazing.
We didn't have to get in an argument about which one to pick.
You didn't have to worry about pausing it for too long and ruining the tape. You didn't have to worry about rewinding it.
Yeah.
It was like, wow, On Demand, that's amazing. And then Netflix came out, and it's just like, wow.
And you see, there are things coming that we're not thinking about right now.
Right.
And there's some people who are thinking about those things.
Right.
And what we're just trying to talk to you about now is when those three technologies happened in the 1900s, electricity, the telephone, and the automobile, that was an amazing revolution that caused all these other things to happen.
It unlocked the ability for all of these things. All of these things would not have been able to happen with the technology of the time, right? Even with progressive, steady increases in speed or growth or whatever, you'd have never had an Amazon.com and Netflix. You would have never had like an interstate.
The highway system.
You would never had a highway system. Getting from one end of the country to the other end of this country used to take weeks and weeks.
There was no one really who understood all three of those technological disruptions that were about to happen. Even if you were a smart person, it would have been hard to see all three of them and understand them well, because electricity, telecommunications, and the automobile, they were brand new, right? Well, guess what's happening right now? A whole bunch more technological innovations, probably 5 to 10 of them, are happening right now. And none of us can grasp all of those either, because, for instance, one of those technological innovations is genomics. And I'm not smart enough to possibly wrap my head around how CRISPR actually works. I understand the concept, but that's going to be mind-blowing. And that's happening at the same time as all these other technological things are happening. Right. So it's very hard for anyone to have enough intelligence to be able to put them all together and to see them all. Now, Elon can see a bunch of them. Yes. And that's why he's able to come up with all these amazing new companies.
But he's also not focused on genomics either.
Right.
I mean, he is focused on autonomous cars, which is a result of AI and neural networks.
Although he is got a company called Neuralink.
True, which would blend AI with the human brain.
Right.
Still different than genomics.
Sure.
We have these new batteries that are coming along, which are going to change the way we think about batteries yet again. Right. I mean, keep in mind, batteries used to be like for a flashlight and maybe a kid's toy, right? Because your little alkaline batteries that you'd stick in whatever did not have that much energy. Now with lithium-ion batteries, you can power a scooter that can carry a full-size human.
Right.
We can, electric bikes. We can make just big batteries that you carry around that can, keep things running for some period of time.
Yeah,
for
or
camping.
like personal segways. Like
Imagine now if we have a 10 times increase in battery capacity.
Right.
What you could have a hand-powered hair dryer. I mean,
right.
the possibilities once you have that are pretty ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, things that help your body move around. We have the technology now to actually have things that aid your body in getting up from a chair and moving your body, right? But
right.
with cheaper, higher density batteries, you'd be able to do all sorts of things that right now we think, well, you'd have to be tethered to be able to do that.
We could have exoskeletons. We
Yes.
wouldn't even need cars. Just run to work.
Right.
Run at 50 miles an hour. Except you wouldn't be breathing. You'd be like, so anyway, as I was saying, I think that if we just, meanwhile,
Right.
who knows? You don't know anything.
Right. We don't know anything. There's so many new things coming. I mean, cold fusion is something that's gotten stalled so many times that most people afraid to go into that field. But when they have the breakthrough in that field, we're just going to be amazed when that happens. There's so much stuff going on. And what we're trying to say here is that instead of coming up with pessimistic problems that could happen with, oh, well, I don't want an autonomous car because then I can't drive anymore.
Right. End of discussion.
Right. Well, that's what happened with horses. You couldn't ride a horse anymore. I mean, you could. You can go borrow your friend's horse and ride on a ranch or something, but there was no more horse riding down the street. That's going to happen with cars.
Right.
But instead of being well, I don't like it because I won't be able to do it. Why think that way?
Right.
Why not think of the positives that are going to happen from it?
And if you're just going to end the conversation, I don't want that to be the case, then you can't be looking at the other potential negatives. Oh, gee, now that we have autonomous cars, what does that mean for people who currently drive cars?
If you let yourself think about autonomous cars, you can think of all sorts of bad things that could happen, right? Your autonomous network could go out and just start rounding people up, right? Because they're just robots on wheels. So, I mean, it's important to be thinking about all aspects of it.
But you need to get into the weeds with it. You need to actually understand how it works. Because otherwise you're just going to be like, oh, it's like Terminator. And it's like, well, no, that's not a very productive way to do it. Whereas, maybe if you get into a deep conversation of how does it work? How does this happen? If this happens, what were that to happen? Then you could be like, this sounds like Terminator. That could be bad. And I have this, and this to prove it. Hey, legislature. Hey, people working on this. Stop. Or, hey, we should make sure that we implement this. Oh, we need the Asimov's laws of robotics. Or we don't need those things. Asimov wrote a lot of books talking about how those laws didn't help. But for the most part, most people just, sure, or no, that's not going to happen. And we don't get to see any of the positives. There are so many positives and intricacies into how the world will work and how the world will change. And
it changes the malaise that we're all feeling right now. We're also overwhelmed with the negative news that comes out every day about something going on in the world that we feel we can't change, that we've just been driven into this zone of well, I guess I just have to make it through the day.
Right.
And that's not a great place to be.
No.
That's why we're all feeling so stressed out and so depressed, because we don't think that there's any positive future. But if you start to use your imagination and to picture solutions to problems, you start to take control back.
Even if the future is not guaranteed to be positive, even if you are just imagining the future with the potential of it being positive and you know the steps of how to get to that positive future, that is a pretty empowering place to be. Because now, instead of it being the world is out of my control, you're saying the world is in my control and I can make it better. Anyway, we hope that you enjoyed this little in-depth talking about the future of technology and how we don't know anything about what the future is going to hold, what
Right.
it'll look like.
And how we're in the middle of a huge technological revolution. And as soon as you begin to open your eyes to it, you begin to see that that is actually what's happening. History books that are written 100 years from now are going to point to this exact time period and say, look at all the convergence that was happening right at that moment. Pretty exciting stuff.
There won't be history books, that's for sure. It's going to be
E-books?
maybe not even.
implants?
It's going to, yeah. No, it's not going to be dial-up, but it's going to, yeah.
I hope not.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us on this journey.
Now you know.